Jewish Channel's Weekend Review. The fallout from Netanyahu's pre-election statements, Israelis and Americans doing business, a Jew from South Dakota, and more of the Jewish news that's changing your world right now in this episode of the Weekend Review. Hello, and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Weekend Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. It's official. Benjamin Netanyahu will remain Prime Minister of Israel after being nominated by parties representing 67 Knesset members at the residence of Israeli President Reuven Rivlin. Former Likud Party member Moshe Kahlon's Kulanu Party was the last piece of a puzzle that could still have pictured Netanyahu's major opponent, Zionist Union leader Isaac Herzog, as Prime Minister. The 10 seats and nearly 300,000 votes Kulanu garnered made him the clear kingmaker in this election. Throwing in their chips with Netanyahu boosted Netanyahu over the top. And unlike the coalition that Netanyahu has led for the past 2 years, this government won't have any dissenting center-left voices, as the current one has with Yair Lapid's Yesh Atid party. But while Netanyahu shored up his governing coalition within Israel and is likely to see clear skies ahead for the coming 4 years, his entirely right-wing government and the campaign tactics he used to get it are coming under significant scrutiny and some criticism from those outside of Israel. Netanyahu has already issued an apology to Israel's Arab community for remarks he made on Election Day, suggesting that it was problematic for his government that Arab voters were turning out, quote, in droves. The Joint Arab List, which became the third largest party in Israel in this election, rejected Netanyahu's apology, saying, quote, the racism of Netanyahu and his government will not end with the inciting statement that he distributed during the elections. Racist legislation and exclusionary discriminatory policies are Netanyahu's working plan also for the coming Knesset, so we can only reject his apology and continue our struggle for equality for the Arab population. And Netanyahu's remarks leading up to Election Day, in which he explicitly declared that there would not be a Palestinian state while he is Prime Minister, came under direct criticism from White House Chief of Staff Dennis McDonough, speaking at the J Street conference.
Why the Prime Minister's comments on the eve of the election, in which he first intimated and then made very clear in response to a follow-up question that a Palestinian state will not be established while he is Prime Minister, were so very troubling. We cannot simply pretend that these comments were never made.
McDonough concluded, in the end, we know what a peace agreement should look like. An occupation that has lasted for almost 50 years must end, and the Palestinian people must have the right to live in and govern themselves in their own sovereign state. Netanyahu retracted his comments somewhat the day after the election, telling MSNBC's Andrea Mitchell that he wants, quote, a peaceful two-state solution, but that, quote, circumstances have to change, unquote, in order for a Palestinian state to be achieved. A big question looming over the American Jewish community is whether it will choose to emphasize Netanyahu's pre-election remarks or his post-election partial retraction. For Haaretz columnist Peter Beinart, who's become an intellectual leader among liberal American Jewish Zionists, the consequences of this election are clear. He wrote, quote, with this election, Israel has killed the theory that it will pursue a two-state solution, and the response from liberal Zionists should shift its approach in response. Our principle should be this: support any pressure that is nonviolent and consistent with Israel's right to exist. That means backing Palestinian bids at the United Nations, labeling and boycotting settlement goods, joining and amplifying nonviolent Palestinian protests in the West Bank, denying visas to and freezing the assets of Naftali Bennett and other pro-settler leaders, pushing the Obama administration to present out its own peace plan and to punish, yes, punish the Israeli government for rejecting it, making sure that every time Benjamin Netanyahu and the members of his cabinet walk into a Jewish event outside Israel, they see diaspora Jews protesting outside. The key question after this election for American Jews is which of four camps they're in. Full-throated support of the Israel that elected Netanyahu on his explicit statements against the Palestinian state, a view that assumed Netanyahu was only really telling the truth after the election, Beinart's view that there is a liberal Zionist approach that protests Israel while backing its right to exist, and then further leftward, a push for one state with a non-Jewish majority. The problem we face is that due to limited polling of the Jewish public on its views, we have relatively little idea of how many Jews fall into any of those four camps and how prominent and influential those in any camp happen to be. But moving on to a different question of the interaction among American Jews and Israel, how to better conduct business in partnership was the topic of a recent conference, and Christian Needham was there.
Influentials from the business world spoke about the role of creativity, inspiration, innovation, and motivation in the high-tech relationship between Israel and America at a unique gathering recently held at an artistic venue. The Beyond Conference at Manna Contemporary Gallery in Jersey City brought together Jewish executives, artists, and television figures for a day of talks and discussions centered around those four core concepts. Barry Salzberg, global CEO of professional service giant Deloitte Touche Tohmatsu, opened the section on motivation.
I really think that this conference is a great way to really advance the conversation about what I saw up on the screen earlier, the three I's, including, of course, Israel. But equally as important, this concept of inspiration and to be able to get perspectives from different speakers and different walks of life on the subject of inspiration and motivation and innovation, things that are near and dear to my heart as the CEO of Deloitte, the largest professional services firm in the world.
Co-organized by the Consulate General of Israel in New York, the day also featured plenty of Israeli speakers, including musician and CEO of technology startup Interlude, Yoni Block, who gave a presentation titled The Future of Storytelling.
I was always into the idea of how you tell a story through a song or something like that, and with what I'm showing here, it's more about how to use technology to be an invisible part of how you tell a story in a different way, something that is for creators, to venture upon.
He said the Israel-U.S. high-tech business relationship made his company's success possible.
And Israel is, as you know, a startup nation, so we were able to raise some capital and create this as a real company. That way we can build that really known format of how startups are, where the development and product are with the geniuses in Israel and the marketing and creative is in the US because it's a way bigger market.
Shelley Zalis is CEO of Ipsos Open Thinking Exchange and said the traditional Israel-U.S. Jewish relationship is also good for the future of an innovative business one.
You know, in Israel, we're a mishpacha, we're a family, and that dynamic is, it's what goes around comes around, where all these ideas come from different places, and we don't overthink things.
To see more from the Beyond Conference, please tune in to the full broadcast edition of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Christian. America is one of two major Jewish population centers in the world these days, alongside Israel, but most American Jews are concentrated in just 10 urban areas. Looking far outside those urban areas to South Dakota is Meredith Gamson's report.
It's not every day that Carol Rosenthal can order a kosher pastrami sandwich for lunch. She lives in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where there are no kosher restaurants.
Yeah, I don't get this at home, and before I'm done with my stint of coming into New York, I'm going to have to make sure I bring some home to my husband, because he's always like, you could bring me a pastrami sandwich? It's like, yeah, I probably could do that sometime. You just have to work a little harder. It's not as easy. Trust me, there's not a kosher restaurant.
South Dakota has only about 350 Jews in the entire state, the smallest population of Jews in the country. North Dakota is a close second with about 400 Jews. By contrast, New York's Jewish population is over 1.7 million. And what concerns Rosenthal most is that there are currently very few children to bring the small Jewish community into the future.
Very few of us actually either have our kids don't have their grandparents that live there, or the grandparents don't have the children and grandchildren that live there.
Rosenthal's own children now live in Kansas and Texas, but when her children were growing up in Sioux Falls, Mount Zion Temple had about 25 children attending religious school. Parents acted as teachers and lay leaders. This is still the structure today. Take preparing for the holidays like Passover.
I had an order form that went out in the temple bulletin right before Passover, and everybody would order what they wanted, and my friend and I would go to Sioux City at that time, and we would go through and go, okay, we need 78 boxes of matzah, and we need, 36 pounds of matzah meal, and then we take it all on my basement floor and separate it. This is for this person, and this is for that person, and this is for that person, and yeah, I know it's a little crazy. I don't do that anymore.
Over her 40-year residency, Rosenthal has learned that holidays and traditions are about more than food.
You start looking at, but what does the holiday really symbolize? Why do we even have this holiday? We're great about the food stuff, but we sometimes get away from, but what is it? What's it all about? So you focus a little bit more. Yeah. Here, you don't have to focus.
To see more of Jewish life in South Dakota, tune into the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Meredith. Finally, this week on Up Close, incarceration. America today stands out as by far the country with the most individuals in jails and prisons. Why is that? What problems does it cause? What can we do about it? The University of Pennsylvania's Marie Gottschalk discusses all of this in Caught, the Prison State and the Lockdown of American Politics. And then, amid America's history of special incarcerations, the imprisoning of certain ethnic groups during World War II is a major topic. Contributing editor for Texas Monthly, Jan Jarbo Russell, discusses some fascinating parts of that story in The Train to Crystal City, FDR's secret prisoner exchange program, and America's only family internment camp during World War II. Here's some of the highlights of my interview with Marie Gottschalk. When we think about what our situation is with how many people we have in prison in America, with what it's like to be in prison in America, what do you find is in the popular mind? What do you think people know the least about this situation?
I think that what they know the least about is that they think everybody's in prison because the crime rate went up, and that the more we lock people up, the more likely it is to reduce crime. And that in fact, I was just serving on a National Academy of Sciences panel on the causes and consequences of mass incarceration, and what we concluded after 2 years of study is that there's very little relationship between increasing the incarceration rate and reducing the crime rate, that it made some impact on reducing the crime rate, but not a huge impact. I think the second point is that Americans don't realize how exceptional the number of people are.
Right, let's talk about how exceptional it is, because it's a factor, right? It's a multiple of the incarceration rate of pretty much any Western European country.
Right. So we're about 5 to 12 times the rate of other countries. And I think the other important point is this is exceptional to our own history. So for much of the 20th century, our incarceration rate didn't gyrate very much. It stayed fairly stable, a little bit up, a little bit down. And then since the 1970s, it's been exponentially increasing straight up until about 2009, where it's dipped down a little bit since 2009, went up again in 2013. So we could say it's kind of stabilized at that point. I think the other point is that people often focus on the numbers, and what they ignore is that we not only have so many people in prison, but we have so many people in some of the most degrading, dehumanizing prisons in the Western world.
It just seems natural to assume if we have all these people in prison, they've committed some crimes. How is it possible that the incarceration rate got away from the crime rate? How is it possible that we ended up with so many more criminals in prison than relative to how much crime is actually which crime is actually decreasing?
First of all, some crime is just how you define a crime, right? So while I was walking to the studio today, I saw people smoking marijuana, right? And we're redefining.
Where was that?
So we're right. You want to go out there now. Yeah. So, but we're redefining all the time what crimes are. So for a while, child pornography, believe it or not, in 1990 was not a federal crime, and now it's one of the fastest increasing crimes. The other thing is that the more you incarcerate people, the more you incarcerate people who are, we could say, marginal crime committers. So the more you widen the net, you're taking in people who may commit 2 crimes a year or 3 crimes a year, where when you're focusing originally, you may have people who are committing 100 or 200 crimes a year. So the more you widen the net, the less impact you're going to have on reducing crime. The other thing we know is that there's an amazing replacement effect. So if you take a bunch of people on the corner who are running a card game or running drugs or something like that, you lock a bunch of them up, it's sort of like, okay, there are new opportunities to move into the business, so you're not necessarily reducing crime.
You can see the full episode of Up Close on the Jewish Channel on cable. You can also listen to the full audio of Up Close as a podcast, available on iTunes or in your favorite podcast player. That's all for this week. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, be well. The Jewish Channel is available on cable. Time Warner Cable Channel 1640, IOPTM Channel 505, RCN Channel 268, Cox Cable Channel 1, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, and on Comcast on the on-demand menu on premium channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.